Thank you very much. I represent Prague Institute of Planning and Development, and we were a stakeholder in the SPIMA project. And I would like to share with you some our experience with metropolitan governance. That's actually the cross-border governance in the functional area, because we have some thematic examples of let's say already long-term metropolitan cooperation in Prague. I think the best example of our good practice is public transport, because it was political priority since the early 1990s, and the metropolitan public transport was integrated into the system that covers also the let's say suburban areas of Prague that are in a different region. That's something that I will try to talk about later. And based on this cooperation in transportation, for example, we are now elaborating the sustainable mobility plan. That's also not dealing only with the mobility plan for the administrative boundaries within the Prague, but also in the whole functional area. And what we have experienced recently is the integrated territorial investments financial tool, and we have some positive and negative experiences yet. I think it's great that actually it incentivizes us to start to cooperate more with the with other region, because the thing that's somehow maybe the biggest challenge in Prague and for Czech Republic is the administrative subdivision, because Prague is at the same time municipality and also NUTS 2 and a NUTS 3 region, and it's comparatively small. It has some 500 square kilometers with 1.2 million inhabitants, and it's being surrounded by another NUTS 2 and NUTS 3 region, the Central Bohemian region, and actually maybe 1/3 of that region is a functional urban area of Prague. So we have some kind of disparities, and we have the functional urban area divided into these two regions. That's quite hard to govern over these two regions. And what actually are the focus area of the integrated territorial investments? It's the schooling, the primary schools and elementary schools, because what we are facing is that a lot of people move to suburbia, but they are still commuting to work in the city center, and they are bringing their kids together, and it was really high pressure to the system of schooling in the Prague city. So the program incentivized to build these facilities in municipalities in the region out of Prague, where actually these people live. Also, we are collaborating on flood protections, and also we are doing some improvements in the integrated public transport. These are the three fields that are covered by the ITI tools. And what I would consider as the biggest challenge that is really based in, I think it's national specific, and that's the administrative subdivision. It's the huge asymmetry, because I think this might be in common for other very big cities in other countries in the European Union, that you have very big municipality, the agglomeration, the core city, that's being surrounded by very small municipalities, and you have to cooperate together. And this asymmetry, it's on many levels. The first one is the, let's say, political power asymmetry, because the core city is represented, for example, by mayor and political representatives. But for example, in Prague, in the functional urban area, we have 400 municipalities, or maybe even more than 400 municipalities. So you have on one side the core city represented by one political representation, and then you have the suburban areas with 400 and more political representations. They are of course trying to look for their own interests. So it's very hard to coordinate this wide body, and yeah, it's also related to check, for example, a land use planning system that's very based on the municipality level. So that's the first asymmetry. Another asymmetry is, for example, the economical asymmetry, because Prague, in terms of GDP per capita and purchasing parity, is typically among the 10 highest or 10 most economically powerful regions in the European Union. Therefore, the possibility to finance projects in the core city are quite limited. But actually, the surrounding region, it's below 75%. So it's another like disparity. And we, for example, have seen it recently when there were some subsidies for research, and a lot of research facilities were built in these, let's say, suburban areas of Prague in the region where the funds were actually available. But I would say that maybe these facilities, really like high-tech research, would be more competitive in the core city when they can better cooperate, really like spatially with already existing universities and existing facilities. So that's another level of asymmetry that must be considered. And yeah, I think it's all related to the thing that we need to think in terms of functional urban areas. So I think that's really the key point. And maybe another asymmetry, one more, is the thing that, for example, the ITI funding, it's roughly only like 1% of Prague annual budget, like in this 6 years programming period. So it's really like a tiny possible financing tool that actually could be, in Prague example, spent mostly only in the central Bohemian region, not in the Prague itself. So it's even like politically quite hard to convince political representation that it's important to do these projects when actually in the Prague city itself you cannot see so much investment because you cannot invest most of these funds in the city of Prague because of the high GDP per capita. So I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Lukas. Let me take from these unbalances that you were saying in the region between the center and the periphery of small municipalities, and taking some of the comments of Giancarlo. How do you think this thing of the stick and the carrot will be managed, or how can be, in the implementation to, in a way, to move and to allow to arrive to a certain agreement or a scenario in which, these disparities can be a little bit more balanced?
Yeah, I for example, agree with the thing that the financial incentives would definitely help. That incentivize municipalities or to cooperate together would help. But on the other hand, I think that, for example, in Prague case, it would be also good to have something like a metropolitan level governance body that would be something like another self-governing body, because that's the thing, because as we have I mentioned, for example, mayors and political representations for each particular areas, they are of course focusing on their own interests of their own people who are there are voting them. But we do not have this body that would be actually elected by the whole metropolitan area and whose interest would be really the metropolitan interest, because that's all about the cost and benefits. If for example the core city itself see some benefits that can get, and the cost would be on, for example, suburbia, they do not care so much, and it's vice versa. That's example of Prague. In Prague, the municipalities in suburbia are like not so much constrained to increase possible development, because they are not covering the cost of all the people commuting to the central city, which actually has to take care over infrastructure investments and public amenities. So if I think if we have this kind of metropolitan governance body, that would be the result of metropolitan elections, let's say, or something like that. I think it would help as well.
Thank you, Lukas.